hey, check out these retro games. Super retro, right? I mean, they have crunchy pixels, low poly textures, and old school aesthetics. Obviously, they're retro games, right? Nope, I fooled you. They're not retro games. They're modern games that feel retro. You totally fell for my prank just now. Oh man, that's so embarrassing for you. Jeez, you're such a dweeb. The definition of what makes a game a retro game is a hotly contested topic. But as always, when someone needs to go to the dictionary and look up the literal definition of a word, usually it just ends up making things worse. Which I guess is what I'm here to do. Because technically, the word retro doesn't mean old. It means new things that imitate an older style. Don't believe me? Look it up yourself. And then you can come back here and apologize for not believing the guy who owns 97 retro handhelds and still lives with his mom. I'm obviously the expert here. So like by the strict dictionary definition, a modern indie game that looks like an old dusty Game Boy game is actually retro. And the actual Game Boy game itself isn't retro. It's just old. So if we're being extremely pedantic, the games in this video are actually more retro than the games we normally call retro. But we are not going to be extremely pedantic, because if there's one thing that retro gamers love even less than arguing about definitions, it's someone pulling out a dictionary and going, actually? So today we're just going to do the sensible thing and play some frickin' games, and we're going to call them whatever we want. In a recent video, I showed off this, my Ioneel Pocket Ace that I have turned into a pocketable retro-style Steam Deck, running my PC games via Game Native. I have this bad boy loaded up with all my favorite retro-style indie games. That's what I'm going to be playing these on today. I also made a video sorta recently that was a showcase of retro games that I love. So in this video, I'm going to show you different games. But like if you like this video, go watch that after you're done with this video. If you need more like the insatiable retro style indie monster that you are. Starting off with a good old beat 'em up game. Man, we are living in a golden age of retro style beat 'em up games. Ninja Turtles, Scott Pilgrim, G.I. Joe, Streets of Rage, and this one, Double Dragon Gaiden. If you're into retro beat 'em ups, you are eating good for new games too. Here you're getting classic Double Dragon beat 'em up action, but in a modern game with more sophisticated game design decisions that make it feel like both a throwback and also a new thing. This one has a few unique additions to the formula too. It's Double Dragon, but it has this tag team system where you kind of play as two characters. When one falls, you continue as the other one. The character I played today here for this footage had a gun too, so it felt like a shooty game and a punchy game. And apparently there's like 20 characters you can unlock as well. Also, this game has roguelike elements and randomization that kind of makes every run have its own flavor. Of course, you get online and local co-op as well. It's the whole package, and it's fun as heck. Looks amazing too, as you can see, if you have eyes, which I assume you do, but maybe that's not good to assume. Let me know in the comments if you have eyes, or not. This here is a little game called Abathor. And I like to think of this game as a sort of modern version of games like Rastan, Blades of Vengeance, Iron Sword. You know, like a old school side-scroller action platformer set in a barbarian Dark Ages fantasy world. It's apparently 4-player co-op, which honestly sounds like a hoot. I haven't tried that yet, but I'd love to someday. You can pick between 4 characters though, and each has their own kind of style to them, their own strengths and weaknesses. It's not a Metroidvania exactly, it's level-based, but there is a bit of that Metroidvania progression feel to it. It's almost RPG-ish, but in the way that the Dungeons & Dragons arcade games are RPG-ish. Action arcade focused with light progression. That's what you're signing up for here. The art style is old school as heck. The characters and the enemy and the world design feel like a true retro Conan-inspired setting. I honestly love games like this. I wish there was more of them, to be honest. Abathor is a great one though, if you like these kind of games. Go and grab your axe and get ready to chop some skeletons in this one. One of my favorite retro-style indie games ever is Bot Vice, made by Dia Games. I talked about Bot Vice in my last indie game video, and the one before that, and probably a bunch more before that too. I've talked a lot about Bot Vice. Well, this game is made by the same developer. It's called Strikey Sisters, and I'll tell you right now that it's very good, but it's not as good as Bot Vice. Few games are as good as Bot Vice, and I suppose I'm doing this game an injustice by talking about Bot Vice so much. So let's talk about Strikey Sisters. This game is about Breakout, or Arkanoid. You know, brick breaker style games. Those games where you got a paddle at the bottom and you bounce the ball to break the bricks. But in this case, the paddle is a person, one of the two titular Strikey Sisters. And instead of mindlessly bouncing the ball, you can actually whack it with your magic wand bat. There's a lot more to it than that. There's enemies and a big overworld map with multiple choices of how you proceed with the game, power-ups, different styles of levels, lovely pixel art and different settings. But at its core, it's just Breakout. Like Breakout meets Bot Vice. Oh man, Bot Vice is so good. You should play this, but also play Bot Vice. It's great. The Darkside Detective has been around for a while, 9 years or so at this point, taunting me from my backlog, but it just got a sequel and that put it back on my radar, and I'm playing through it now with fresh eyes, and I am loving this game. It's a classic style point and click adventure game. Pretty standard puzzle solving stuff, but what makes this one unique is two things. The first is the art style. Like, look at how good this game looks. They restricted themselves to super low resolution. This is like less than GBA levels of fidelity, but they did so much with so little to make the gorgeous looking scenes and characters. Seriously, this is among the best looking pixel art that I've seen. The second thing that makes it great is the story. The format of the game is these kinda mini adventures. You're a detective investigating cases, and each one is so unique, and the writing is so dang good. This game gave me literal laugh out loud moments. That doesn't happen to me often, especially not with retro-style text-based point-and-click adventure games. The banter between the detective and the police officer is, it's just priceless. Great music too. There's lots to love about this series. This is a very weird game, Delusion. I covered this in my recent retro and modern fantasy FPS game video, and I haven't touched it since then, but I finally got it working on my retro doodad, and I fired it up to record gameplay for this video, and man, this game is just so weird and mysterious. The world is this big open world that you're free to move through and explore, but the story pulls you in a certain direction. Kind of like a Elder Scrolls game, you know, but like a PS1 acid trip version of one of those. The graphics look straight out of early 3D games, right down to the wobbly textures and geometry. This game is so much more than what it looks like at first. It's a good long game packed with stuff to do, stuff to see, lore and characters and story to experience. Right now I'm playing a game called Kingsfield on the PS1. That's the Dusty Game Society Game of the Month. And Delusion feels like an homage to games like that. Super early first-person action-adventure games with low poly graphics, slow movement, clunky combat. The retro vibes are off the frickin' chart with this game. McPixel 3 is the sequel to McPixel. Not the sequel to McPixel 2. There is no McPixel 2. They went to 3 after the first for lots of good reasons, and that should give you an idea of how serious this game takes itself. This game is utter nonsense. The first McPixel game was nonsense, and the sequel upgrades that to utter nonsense. The idea with this game is that it's a puzzle-solving adventure game, and each level is actually 6 mini scenarios back to back, and each one happens really quick, like less than a minute each. Your job as McPixel is to stop the explosion. Each scenario ends with an explosion. You gotta figure out how to solve the problem and not die, but you probably will die at first, and then it moves on to the next scenario. And then at the end, it loops all the way back around to the start, so you get a chance to try something new to save yourself from exploding. Kinda like the movie Groundhog Day, where you relive the same day over and over. Except that it's a retro-style pixel adventure puzzle-solving game, with total utter nonsense tomfoolery, lots of pee and poo and beating people up with fish and killing people and people exploding and all that fun nonsense that young TechDweeb would have gotten a total kick out of. And adult TechDweeb gets a total kick out of too. Here we have a new game for me. I've only played about an hour or two of it. It's called Easy Delivery Co. And this game is so, moody. It's chill, but also kind of unsettling. There's this genre of kind of half music, half white noise that I like, called coldcore. Basically this droning lo-fi, kind of mysterious, but also cozy melody stuff that makes my brain go, ah. This game is kind of like the game version of that. It's this world full of shops and little animal people that you go around and talk to, and everyone is lovely, nice little critters. There's very little pressure. You just kind of do it at your own pace. You're running a delivery business, so you need to go and get packages and deliver them between towns. You have this little computer that you can pull up to take on jobs and look at the map. It has kind of an analog feel to it, actually. But the world is this frozen mountainside, and the towns have this industrial coldness to them, and the actual environment is deadly. I don't just mean like the slippery roads and how you can fall off on your car. I mean like when you're in your car or a shop, you're fine because it's warm, but when you're out in the cold air, you very quickly freeze to death. As someone who lives in Canada and has to deal with exactly this in the winter, driving around slippery, snowy roads and quickly scurrying between bastions of warmth, this game kind of feels like home to me. It's hard to describe though. You kind of need to play this one for yourself to really understand what makes it special. Okay, this game is freaking amazing. It's called UnMetal, and it's like a modern new version of the old retro Metal Gear games, like the NES and MSX games. It's that, but it's also a parody of that. It kind of tries to capture the energy of Metal Gear as a series and package it up into this new retro throwback game that leans heavily into the parody aspect. The gameplay itself is tight. It's a top-down stealth action game. You sneak around military bases, hiding behind walls, distracting guards, and doing that classic stealth thing where enemies have the situational awareness of my mom when she falls asleep in her knitting chair, which, to be fair, is exactly how stealth games worked back then. But UnMetal is doing something weirder than just retro stealth. The entire story is being told by your character, Jesse Fox, during an interrogation. And Jesse is not the most reliable storyteller. So as he explains what happened and the story kind of changes, the game will literally change in real time. Like he explains stuff and then the world changes and you have to deal with it. It's honestly really clever. I love the idea and the humor. But I think that this is definitely going to be a your mileage may vary situation. I can see lots of people thinking this game is just trying too hard. But as someone who tries too hard every single day, all day, every day, that's all I do, I get it. Lunark is a game that is a throwback not just in like the art style and the vibe, but this is also a type of game that we don't really get these days. The cinematic platformer. Most modern indie platformers want you to run and wall jump and do speedrun kicks and parkour and stuff all over the place all the time, but Lunark forces you to calm down, which is hard for me if I've had too much root beer. This game is a throwback to the old cinematic platformers like Prince of Persia, Flashback, Another World, the kind of games where every single movement has weight. You carefully step forward, stare at a spike trap for 10 seconds, and then attempt a jump that may or may not end your entire life. And yes, it often does end your life. The animation is that rotoscope style that these games did so well, and that gives the movement a surprisingly realistic feel. Every jump has momentum to it, every climb feels tiring, and mistiming anything, even slightly, usually results in a dramatic and humiliating death. But once you learn the rhythm, the game becomes incredibly satisfying. Each screen feels like a little puzzle box of traps, enemies, and perfectly timed jumps. The sci-fi story is interesting enough, but the real star here is the art and the atmosphere. Just look at what you're seeing. This feels like a lost DOS masterpiece from the early 90s that somehow traveled through time and landed on my retro doodad. You know how sometimes a modern indie game tries to feel retro, but it still ends up feeling kinda modern? You know, with clean menus, smooth difficulty curves, nice friendly checkpoints. Angry video game nerd 8-bit thinks that those games are total garbage and spits in their face. This one feels like an NES game in both the good and the bad ways, but like on purpose. It opens with an FMV cutscene made by the titular Angry Nerd that we all know and love, but you're quickly dumped into a side-scrolling parody of classic Mega Man style platformers. Right down to the stage select. You gotta pick a stage and you jump into a level based on one of the terrible games that the nerd has ranted about over the years. You gotta try to, survive a bunch of traps and enemies that the designers obviously made as a throwback to the tough as hell enemies in the old NES Mega Man games. However, just like the old games that this is referencing, the controls are tight as heck. Run, jump, slide, shoot the NES zapper, and grab power-ups like beer bottles and swear words that I dare not utter here because swearing gives me a tummy ache. This feels amazing to play. The stages are short, but they are not easy. I totally suck. just like I do at actual Mega Man games. You got spikes, pits, enemies that you need to learn their patterns, moving platforms, and bosses pulled straight from the nerd's lore and universe, I guess. There's lots of references and inside jokes from the show. And if you're not familiar with the show, maybe none of that stuff will land. Maybe it'll just feel like stuff, but the game itself is good. It's challenging, but not quite as cruel as the real NES era games, which is good because my gamer skills are only getting worse as I slowly decompose in my striped pajamas. And there you have it. 10 modern games that absolutely did not exist in 1992, but somehow kind of trick your brain into making you think that they did. At least they trick my brain. My brain is pretty easily tricked though. It's not very good. And if you took nothing else away from this video, I hope you at least took this. There are people out there, real people with jobs and everything, who are pouring their hearts into making games that feel like the ones that shaped us. And that's actually really beautiful. You know, that games like this exist, not just as retro games, but as new experiences too. And not only that, we're in a freaking retro style indie game renaissance right now. We're spoiled for choice with this kind of stuff. But if you liked any of these games, or if you have a modern game that feels retro that I didn't include here and I probably should have, then please let me know. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. I have a lot of free time. I live with my mom. Did I mention that? That's it from me for today. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.